Welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. And just before we bring in our guests for our conversation on the proposed registration of political parties, let's take this background report put together by our correspondent Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Political parties are crucial for the functioning of modern democracies. They are vital links between citizens and government, mobilizing support, shaping policy, and providing a framework for political participation and competition. It is a platform for representation. Many parties have emanated from groups with political consciousness and some willing to make changes in the political space of the country with their own ideology and idiosyncrasies, and that has made the number of political parties in the country to continue to increase. Recently, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) reveals 110 associations applied to the commission seeking the registration as political parties ahead of the 2027 general elections. According to the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, these political associations were the ones that had submitted letters of intent as of Monday, 23rd June. But he warned that INEC would not accord preferential treatment to applicants irrespective of the status of their promoters, either ordinary or prominent citizens. He, however, confirmed that the electoral umpire was diligently processing them in accordance with the electoral laws and guidelines while addressing concerns about impartiality. The INEC chairman emphasized the Commission's commitment to fairness as he dismissed allegations that INEC was compromising its independence, recalling similar unfounded accusations made in 2013. Now, this development has brought reactions, with many asking how many political parties does a country really need to prove its political strength, and how well does INEC regulate these parties? If eventually registered, how many political parties will Nigeria boast of? Questions our guests will be answering shortly.
Right, indeed, questions that the guests will be responding to, and indeed they are ready to respond. Let's begin by introducing here in the studio Professor Sheriff Gali Ibrahim. He's former head of Department, Political Science and International Relations at the University of Abuja, Director, International Center at the same university, and head of Contemporary China-Africa Research in Nigeria. Always a pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let me also welcome here in the studio Victoria Etamesi, Director of Voter Education and Publicity Department at Independent National Electoral Commission. We thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
And also with us right here in the studio for the conversation is Jide Ojo, a public affairs analyst. Always a pleasure to have you. Many thanks for joining us, sir.
My pleasure, Leah. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's begin with INEC. What are the gaps in the old guidelines that necessitated, the new ones as it is? What gaps did the new guidelines seek to plug?
The new guidelines, if I would call it that, it came into effect in 2022, so it's 4 years old. So it's really not.
3 years.
Yeah, okay. So it's 3 years old. So it's not
That new.
terrible, yeah, so to speak. But it came into effect to address issues that that affected the effective functionality of the Commission with regard to managing political parties. So if you go back to 2023 or thereabout, we had so many political parties. 91 political parties contested the 2019 election. The Commission tried to reduce the number because then we saw that it was really cumbersome. The ballot papers were more like a booklet, and it also affected the ability of the electorate to manage their selection and choice. So that again impacted on voided votes because inadvertently a voter would probably thumbprint on the wrong because of the myriad of logos and the rest. So the Commission thought that with due consultation that there was need to have quality rather than quantity. And many of these political parties we have seen, and it has been established, they are basically special purpose vehicles. So they just come on when it's close to election so that they can probably negotiate for whatever with the leading parties. So there was need to streamline and ensure that those who were there for serious business and really needed and were ready to help the citizenry, so to speak, to be good players, if I may use that expression, in the political arena. So essentially the 2022 guidelines and regulations helped to manage the number, because it was with the guidelines now that it was established based on the provisions of the Constitution and the Electoral Act, because the Constitution was also amended, going back to the 2023 saga where the Commission deregistered some parties. Some of them went to court and they said that the Electoral Act was inferior to the Constitution, and so we needed to abide by what the Constitution said, because the Constitution did not specifically state that we had to deregister them, because it protected their fundamental human rights anyway. And so in 2018, there was an alteration to the Constitution to support what the Electoral Act provided. And that was when, after the provisions established or stated in the Constitution, which listed the conditions for deregistration, it was based on that, and performance came into effect, which meant that a political party needed to have needed to perform. We needed to see that you're able to win an election no matter how small. And so that was infused into the Constitution, and now the guidelines and regulations clearly listed out what the Constitution and the Electoral Act provided, in line with what a political party must have or achieve before it can sustain itself.
Have you used these guidelines to register for any party registration process at all?
Yes. Yes.
When and how often do you register political parties periodically, or when you have requests?
It's based on request and if you meet the requirements. For instance, in 2019, after the 2019 general elections, after the 2019 general elections, where about 75 political parties were offloaded. Recall, we had 91 political parties that participated in the 2019 election. And so with that provision of the Constitution, which listed 3 items that if you're in breach of the requirements or the stipulations of the Constitution, if you're not able to win a percentage for the presidential election, for instance, you must win 25% of the votes in a state. If it's for a governorship election, you must win 25% of the votes in a local government. And then for the National Assembly, you should win a seat. And then for the chairmanship election, you should win the votes. You should win a ward for the chairmanship election. So those were the stipulations or the provisions that guided the Commission in shedding political parties that had no representation at all on the list of election victories.
All right, Director, listening to you, and of course, from the experience of INEC, what played out in 1999 when you had so many political parties, and then, of course, the
2019.
2019, rather. 2019, when you had so many political parties, and the deregistration that followed after that. These guidelines now for registration of political parties, do you think is stiff enough, to build out political, rather, associations, just so that we do not get so many registered and then deregistered eventually?
Yeah, again, like I said, the provisions in the guidelines and regulations, I think would help us weed out. You saw or you heard from the intro where the Honorable Chairman mentioned that 110 political associations have submitted letters of intent to the Commission. So there are layers of activities that need, or processes that need to be run through in order for us.
You think those processes are stiff enough? That's my
I
question.
think so.
Really?
I think so. I think so.
Okay, let's get to Jide Ojo now. This trend of seeing associations wanting to be registered as political parties, 110, that's a huge number. In your own view, what do you think it's leading to the surge in wanting to, in associations wanting to become political parties, and what does it portend for our political climate?
Thank you, Leah. Good morning, Nigerians. I think it's a very good omen. Yeah, people are showing interest in political activities, and it's deepening our democracy. And what director said, excuse me, was quite in order. I followed through. I've worked with political parties for since 2003, and I've seen their trajectory. See, why many people may express concern, oh, we have too many political parties. Do you know how many political parties India has? Do you know how many political parties exist in U.S.? Is it because people just talk of Republican and Democratic Party, you think there are only two? There are over 100 political parties in U.S. I was in U.S. in 2010 to observe their midterm election. And India's political party is over, is it not close to 1,000 or thereabout? But you see, one of the pillars of democracy is political party. In fact, if you take a military system and you take a civil rule, the difference, because the military build rules, if it's brick and mortar, they can do that. But what one pillar, one showpiece of a country running a democracy must have a political party. While there are systems where there is only one party, like in China, or two party, there are most democracies have multiple party system. Now, let me give you one instance. It's just that in Nigeria, we are too impatient with party management, party development, and party institution. Islamic Brotherhood, Prof, you will know, in Egypt, that Mohamed Morsi won his presidential election, I think 2011, 2010 or thereabout, was in existence for over 80 years before it won that election. 80 years. Islamic Brotherhood had been in existence in Egypt. Thank you. Muslim Brotherhood. Muslim Brotherhood, yeah, thank you. Over 80 years before it won. But in Nigeria, we are just too impatient. Oh, this, I'm all for, you see, what we need, what my own concern is not the number of parties we have. My own concern is perhaps there is a condition that should be precedent about how you get on the ballot. And you know, Professor Charles Soludo, when he was governor of Central Bank, did something about bank consolidation. Remember, where banks are now graded, they are now in phases. There are banks that are state-based, there are regional-based, there are national-based, based on how much resources you have. There are national players, there are regional players in the banking industry today. And that is what we should encourage. Parties should exist. If you want to exist in just a local government to contest election, chairmanship and councillorship, let there be. If you want a regional party, we have all of this in the First Republic. But the military coup of 1966 changed all the dynamics. We now centralized everything. Parties must have offices in 2/3 of Nigeria. They must have national headquarters. And then you now wonder whether this party could muster resources to run efficiently and professionally these offices that we are putting them under pressure to establish. But it is all because of our history with military rule that the perception of some people in time past is that we need to have a centralized system. That's why today people are calling for the scrapping of State Independent Electoral Commission. Let INEC take over their role. They are calling for the scrape and they said they don't want state police. Let there be only one policing system. But is that what other federal system does? Let me share something with you. When I was researching, I wrote about this party development. I mean, when the issue of contention about Nigeria is now dovetailing into one-party system, when people were shouting, I said, look, Nigeria is already a one-party state, but not de jure, it's de facto. There is a de jure. A de jure means by law, Nigeria is a multi-party system. So we have 19 registered political parties as we speak. But there is a one dominant party, which is what also happens in many other democracies. If you talk about South Africa, what will come to your mind? ANC. But there are so many other political parties. There is DA, there is EFF, Economic Freedom Party, there is Inkatha Freedom Party. But people don't get to hear about them. They win 1 or 2 seats, they still exist. But if you say South Africa, you say ANC. If you go to Ghana, you will think there are only 2 political parties, NPP and NDC. But there are other parties, including the party that was established by Kwame Nkrumah. It's still in existence. They win 1 or 2 seats in the parliament. But Ghana is seen as a de facto 2-party state. The same thing with UK. Many people think there's only the Conservative and the Labour Party in UK. But there are about 8 to 12 political parties in UK. Only that there are 2 dominant. The same thing with US that I cited earlier on. Over 100 parties that exist across the states, 50 states in US. But the dominant ones are Republican and the Democratic Party. So what Nigeria is also coming to terms with is that, depending on your perception, you can say Nigeria is a de facto 2-party state if you want to look at PDP and APC. Or you say it's a de facto 1-party state because of the migration, the pilgrimage of people from other political parties into the ruling APC. So the more the merrier for me in a democracy. You cannot shut the door against party registration.
Right.
The only thing is that encourage them to be, and INEC is doing a lot in terms of training, capacity building for this. I've been involved in some of the activities in time past, but not so we just need to give, because usually when you register a party today, before that party will become a electoral winning party, it takes a bit of time. You have to do recruitment of members. You have to do your congresses from what Congress, local government Congress, state Congress, to national convention, to now elect your officials. Then you need money to run the daily activities of those parties. Look at PDP that was in power for 16 years. Where is the national secretariat of PDP? It's still in a rented apartment. Their party secretariat is still under construction. The one that they meant to have by themselves.
All right, Jide, thank you very much. Professor Gali, Jide Ojo has mentioned copiously, examples in other climes. And I'm asking, what lessons can Nigeria truly learn from other democracies in regulating political parties? And that's without, regulating political party formation without stifling political expression.
Thank you so much. I agree with my brother Jide. There are some certain considerations, that need to be made. Looking back, into the historical abyss of Nigeria, because you learn sometimes by experience. Our Constitution, as well as the Electoral Act, I believe that the two are actually embracing. Why? Because they serve as platforms that provide that particular political freedom for Nigerians to register, assemble into political bandwagoning, as well as political organizations, in order to provide greater membership and followership to establish a government. But one thing we must put into cognizance is that the benefit, significance of the number of these particular political parties, what do they bring to Nigeria? The director initially said it actually frustrates INEC, even by producing the ballot papers. This is one, as well as confusing the electorate. Some will actually look at some of the emblems, confusing or misleading. Which one should I actually bear? Well, I mean, choose. Previously, my people, whenever they go to the polling unit, they will ask them, vote for my Masara. My Masara, that is that one that carries corn, the symbol of corn, that emblem, you understand? So, if there are two things that resemble that, it creates confusion, to the electorate. And this is one. Then secondly, we should also look at the motive behind this particular registration, as well as the people carrying out this particular registration. Political party is supposed to provide political orientation. Those forming those political parties, have they received a greater political orientation before they venture into politicking? This is one. Secondly, political party should provide political socialization. Those wishing to establish these new parties, are they politically socialized? Then three, political parties should provide interest articulation. Concurrent political parties in Nigeria, do they invite interest articulation? That is from the electorate, from Nigerians. Number four, political parties should provide interest aggregation, meaning you aggregate the interest of the electorate, culminating into national policy that will benefit the general masses of the entity. So the major motive is political organizations in Nigeria, which is our country, they assemble themselves as business ventures. We want to establish a government for the benefit of what will emanate from that particular office, not for the national benefit, not for the general benefit of the masses. History has shown that. The political parties, which have failed to provide since independence, my brother, we are still battling on good roads, how to get securitized, how to get more vibrant schools, how we should improve our image on the world stage. So many things attached. But that notwithstanding, we should better the political environment and the political system. I hold the belief that having so many political parties, is not the ideal situation in our polity. Why? Because it brings about wastage. Wastage in terms of financing these particular political parties. It even brings about frustration on the side of the electorate. You go, trying to choose which party is that. Then these political parties, again, what we need to have is we must rise to the position of changing the narrative and alternating from the Western-style democracy. Because we must not have so many political parties. We must not be like the United States or United Kingdom. After all, we are trying to distance ourselves from the variables of colonialism and perpetual domination. So to be a free people is when we begin to strategize, synergize, as well as bring up new patterns of governance and administration, especially in Africa. We must not continue to be followers. We have thinkers, we have wise men, we have scholars, we have able men and women who can think twice as well as initiate political projects that will actually be beneficial for Nigeria and Africa. We must not continue to be followers. So what I mean here is that we should recruit party members on the basis of meritocracy, but political parties recruit all sorts of human beings, all sorts of people as members of political party. What allows for membership of political parties, political recruitment in our country is how much dollar, how much naira do you have in your pocket? How are you able to finance political campaigns? How are you able to galvanize political support? But not what you are going to produce, which is dividend of that particular democracy, as well as what political parties should actually provide to the people. So what we are after is we go for meritocracy. My brother made mention of China. Even China is not a one-party state. There are political organizations and political associations. What China does is that it shifted its alliances from the Western-style democracy. What they do is political association and political harmonization against political competition and rivalry. So even though in the Western-style democracy, we are being told that there has to be what? There has to be opposition. We agree there has to be opposition. But those opposition parties should not engage in disharmony, a kind of acrimonious rivalry and competition, which may lead into lynching, violence, and post-electoral violence. But what we should have is political cooperation among political parties.
Many thanks, Professor Ibrahim, for your thoughts. We'd like our viewers to know that they can participate in this conversation. You can send in your questions, your comments, or suggestions, and the number is on your screen. You can send either SMS or WhatsApp messages. Please do not call. All right, I'd like to get back to the director from INEC now. Listening to Jide Ojo and Professor Ibrahim speak, they seem to, or rather, Professor Ibrahim thinks that, well, we do not need too many political parties, but Jide Ojo thinks that, well, it's good for our democracy. There's so many challenges which have been highlighted already. I mean, strain on the part of INEC, financially, logistics, different, spheres for the voters, frustration, yes, of course, because, I mean, trying to pick out political parties from a very bulky ballot sheet, can be something else. But I want to know what INEC, intends to do with all of this coming up. 110 associations seeking registration. At the moment, a lot of critics think that INEC is not monitoring and regulating the existing political parties, just 19. Enough. Now, if majority of these political parties get registered, does INEC have the capacity to do its job as far as, monitoring and regulating political parties, or maybe doing it better than it is at the moment?
I think INEC has the capacity to. It's one of its core functions to regulate and monitor political parties. It does have the capacity. But the issue is, was there any due diligence by these political associations before they submitted their letters of intent? If you go through that list, a lot of them are found wanting. The minimum requirement is that you must have a name, you must have a logo or a symbol, you must have an acronym, you must have an address, and there should be a pro tem secretary and chairman. Quite a significant number of these political associations were found wanting in one of these or the other. Not very few, maybe about half, met all the requirements. So it's really not, in that instance, you wouldn't say the commission is the one throwing them out. They have thrown themselves out because the guidelines and regulations are there, the Electoral Act is there, but they still went ahead and submitted a letter of intent that does not convey or cover or provide information on all of those, in all of those boxes. So it's really not an issue of whether INEC has the capacity, but the issue is, are the political parties, the political associations, like Prof said, what are they bringing to the table? It's like just wanting to join the bandwagon so that it will be on record. The Honorable Chairman made a joke during the stakeholder meeting, and somebody said, "Oh, didn't you see me? I was a member during the signing of the peace call." So if you're just interested in being amongst the big shots when the cameras are on. From the outset, you probably didn't have any agenda, or you knew you weren't going to go far. So at the end of the day, I think it is to question or to interrogate the honesty and the seriousness that these associations bring to bear, what they are bringing to the table, whether they even intend to go anywhere or whether they are just unnecessarily giving the commission, I don't want to use the word stress, just making it vent its energy for nothing. But at the end of the day, there are layers of scrutiny that would be exercised to ensure that the wheat is separated from the chaff, and then those who survive, having gone through all those layers of scrutiny, would definitely
How transparent would this process be?
Oh, it's very transparent. For instance, the associations have submitted their letters of intent. The commission has acknowledged the receipt of those letters. now it is going through, it has itemized all the submissions so that everyone can see. I think it's you during the intro, you put it on the screen. So you can even see the political associations that have shot themselves in the foot already. That means they won't even move to the next stage. And by the time you get to the next stage, once you meet the requirements for this at this level, and the commission acknowledges, you make the payment of the administrative fee, and you're given access to upload your documents and particulars online. It's going to be strictly electronic. So once that upload is done, and then the commission will now sit again back and scrutinize all the submissions and attachments. I think nothing can be more transparent than that. And again, they would be notified if they do not meet the threshold in line with the Constitution, the provisions of the Constitution and the Electoral Act, and the guidelines and regulations. And after that, then they move on to the last stage where the commission would now notify those who have scaled the requirements.
I'm just wondering if the commission has a bias in favor of registering as many political parties as possible, or bias in favor of reducing, to the barest minimum. Because I'm trying to see how you are going to enforce compliance without being, accused of partisanship.
The law does not allow us to stop anybody, any association from being registered. Like I said, provided they did their due diligence. If they meet all the requirements, it doesn't matter what the commission feels. The commission will and must register them. So like I mentioned earlier, they themselves, quite a number of them, just have shot themselves in the foot right from the onset. So if they do their due diligence, they come to the table with something and they stand for something, then the commission will have no choice but to register them.
All right. Jideojo, you seem to support this association, so I think I need to look closely. Maybe your name is on one of them.
It's not. I didn't see.
Okay, you can confirm that. Yeah, okay, that's good. Anyways,
it's my right, even if I did.
Anyways, but looking at all of this playing out, will this really deepen our democracy? Or will it complicate the electoral process? We already have challenges with the few that we have. Handling them is a big issue. I mean, you have come on this program a number of times and you have talked about our elections, INEC not being the problem most of the time, but the political parties, lack of ideologies, political parties who are just there because of negotiations and all, what they can get and all. Would this not complicate the problem? For Nigerians generally, because at the end of the day, I mean, if our political space is toxic or not working, it's the people that suffer.
Thank you. See, it's an evolution. Let me, for the benefit of those who may not know, the commission in between 1999 and 2002, the commission attempted to stop the registration of certain political associations. And they went to court. Remember, it was Chief Ganifa and me that was the lead counsel for those associations. And the court ruled, you cannot stop them. This is a democracy. Did you know that we have only three political parties in 1999? But because of that Supreme Court decision, I think in 2002, that was when the number shot up to 30, from 30 to 60, from 60 to 70, is it 74, or that was when it went to 91? Then from 91, it started coming down. Now, the Supreme Court, which is the apex court, said you cannot put a sledgehammer on party registration. Even the Bible says, let the wheat and the chaff grow together. At the appropriate time, they will be separated. The Constitution has been altered in Section 225, subsection A, to say that INEC, you now have the power to deregister. Yeah. What else? So, you see, I don't want us to have this fixation about whether they are special purpose vehicle, they are not special purpose. That is not our business. The business of democracy is the good, the bad, the ugly. You must allow them. you can, who are you to say somebody, you are not looking, this is not Vatican where you are looking for saints. Political association, political party is a sinner's avenue. They say there is a church called All Saints Church. That is the biggest lie. There's not All Saints Church anywhere. It's just a name. So you cannot. I'm giving you historical antecedent that the Supreme Court has ruled that you cannot shut the door against political associations seeking registration. And that was why many people took advantage and the floodgate was open. And then there was, I think, Section 75 of 2010 Electoral Act, which now gave INEC the power to deregister. And then when INEC wielded that power, these political parties went to court and said, look, the Electoral Act is inferior to the Constitution. And then the government of the day, government of President Buhari, also now altered the Constitution in 2018 to now put that section 225 subsection 225A, which now empowers the commission to deregister. What I would expect INEC to do is that if it's 200 political associations that are seeking to register and they meet the criteria of the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and the guideline, they have to be registered, irrespective of whether the commission likes or not. Now, the flip side is that post-election, INEC must stand and wield the big stick. You know what this party also hide under? Because the law says you must win, director have spoken to it, certain number of threshold of votes or seat. It's either of the two. You must either win, I think, 25% of vote or at least a councillorship. Because it's not INEC that is conducting local government election. INEC only conducts area council election. So some of this party hide under the fact that, oh, all the CX must have conducted local government election before you can say my party has not won even a councillorship. But the court has also found a way to interpret that in as far as those elections are not within the purview of INEC, INEC is right after the election, after due diligence, audit, investigation, because there is a whole department in INEC that is called Election and Party Monitoring. And you know, the Constitution in the third schedule has empowered INEC to register, monitor activities of political parties, including their finances. It's very elaborate. It's a constitutional provision that the commission cannot shirk on. So it is just for the commission to now, maybe 6 months, 1 year after the general election, to look at those who met that constitutional threshold. Did they win area council, at least one councillorship position in the area council, or they won threshold of that vote that is the basis, or they are in breach. Because it also says if you are in breach of the provisions that under which you are registered. For instance, if you provide false documentation or you cook up stuff, that you can be deregistered. So what I will encourage the commission to do is to be alive to its responsibility in that respect, so that we only have serious-minded people. Whether you want to register a special purpose vehicle to negotiate during the party primaries that is coming up in 2027, it's not anybody's business. But if you do your business and you didn't meet, at the end of the day, you didn't meet the criteria to sustain your registration, INEC is the regulator, and I think the chairman calls it regulator and no, it's not umpire. I've heard him use two words, but I will stick
registrar.
With the registrar. God bless you, Vic. The registrar and the regulator of the party. So it is for whoever is the party, the commission have to meet, maybe 6 months, 1 year after the general election, to now do a proper assessment. How many of these parties met the condition to sustain their registration? If they don't, You don't look at anybody's size, even if it's your brother that registered.
But won't the damage have been done already?
Which damage are you talking about?
I mean, if
Wasted
these political
time.
parties were registered to carry out a particular motive during the general election, they have participated already. We already have bulky ballot paper, for example. INEC has gone through the financial strain of having to produce ballot papers. The voters themselves have been frustrated trying to get their candidates, on the ballot sheet.
Who has done the study to say that the party see?
What played out in 2019? I mean, having 91.
Yes.
We know the level of literacy in this country. All right. He just talked about Masara, for example, and all of that. So, I mean, there's all that confusion going on.
Let me. Sorry. Do you know that is why the commission has even said, if you have logo that is similar to existing party, you will not be registered.
But the question is, can you even see the logo in such a bulky ballot sheet?
Oh.
I mean, so my point is, not my point. My question is, should we do something about the laws? So just so that we can trim the registration and the number of political parties that we have because of all these issues.
Yes, I do agree, but I don't want us to be fixated on the problems. Let's look at a country of over 200 million. Does it just need... And people have talked about, let's have two-party system. We tried that in 1990 to 1993 with the two-party NRC and SDP. But they were decreed into existence. And know what will happen is that party evolves. Now people know whether you are serious. It's like a newspaper. If you are a publishing outfit and you are known to be a purveyor of fake news, people will not buy your paper. They will not run their advert in such newspaper. So if you are a party that is unserious, you yourself will be the one to go and look for a party to merge with, because that provision is also there for you, that you can merge. There is a provision for merger, provided it's not more than 1 year to the next election. You can merge with existing parties to have a stronger fit.
All right, Julie, thank you very much. We have some messages coming before I get back to Professor Gali. Messages coming in from our viewers. Joshua Cannon, Usman E. Joshua, Cannon JP, says, good morning, Nigeria. Thanks for the good job. Let elections start among political parties to have 3 leading parties for final public general election to help our country to survive, please. Well, that's his opinion. And another says, I am Abbas Abubakar Saad from Jalingo, Taraba State. Introducing another political party, in addition to those we already have, may cause confusion for the majority of the electorate. My question is, are the current political parties not strong enough to solve our problems and promote our priorities as a people? More importantly, are our problems caused by political parties or by individuals? I believe having only 2 political parties would be ideal. If you do not belong to Party A, you would automatically belong to Party B. We're one of those who don't like A and B. And another says, your guests have nailed the real issues. What many of these people registering political parties just want is to acquire the title, former presidential candidate of Party XYZ. Yeah, Ray?
All right, more comments here. This one says, good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, our guests in the studio. I'm suspecting some persons are sponsoring these new political parties for their personal interest to get money from the major political parties during the election. My regards to my mentor. You have your mentee here watching, Vincent Ugbediojo from Lugbe in FHA. And, of course, we have Good Day Ma. During the last election, many Nigerians who registered did not get their voter cards. That's coming to INEC to vote. What is the problem? When will you start new voter registration? I'm sure you'll respond to that. This one says, advise the Senate to make new laws on party regulations. Good morning, Nigeria. The proposed registration of new parties to me is unnecessary and uncalled for. INEC should work with the political parties we have now. Coming from Eda Samuel Shoaibu Ihima from Kogi State. All right, you want to respond to some of the comments?
Yeah, let me start with the registration. So the Commission has actually released the dates for the commencement of or resumption of continuous voter registration. So August 18th will start nationwide. And before then for Anambra, since we have Anambra governorship election coming up in November, registration would commence in Anambra a month ahead of the nationwide registration. There will be a 10-day registration exercise in Anambra in July. It's next week, actually. Yes, from the 8th to the 17th of July in Anambra. But for the nationwide, it is August 18th. And they will have the opportunity for those who didn't collect their cards earlier to collect their cards if they want to make changes, corrections. The opportunity would be there. But like as was mentioned by the Honorable Chair, this time around it's going to be physical appearance at the wards first before they eventually move on to the two-tier registration process. So we'll start with the physical for now. Then after a week.
All right, thank you. Let me get to Professor
Yes, the
Gali.
online. The online.
First.
No. We're starting with the physical first before we now open the window for those who would do the online and now complete with the...
All right. Now, there's so much talk, Prof, about the number, even from the comments of the viewers, is our problem, the number of political parties and all whatnot. But in your opinion, as a political scientist, to what extent does the existing political party structure contribute to Nigeria's democratic development? Now, we have 110, applications. Does it signal vibrancy or does it signal, is it just systemic fragmentation?
No, it just signals complexity and complications. I'm happy my brother Jide, in his submission, he recommended and advocated for just 3 political parties. When he made mention for the good, the bad, and the ugly. It means that there just 3 political parties.
Putting words in my
Fantastic submission.
Yes.
Not on my behalf. He has to write his own memorandum.
But you don't see that the bad and the ugly will dominate, and they can form a coalition.
So, sincerely speaking, from my heart, having a kind of a colossal number of political parties will actually amount to political overdose. And if you take a kind of an overdose drug, definitely you begin to get tipsy. So just the same exemplification given to the political terrain, where you have too many. As a professor of political science, because I'm not interested of knowing the titles and the names of political parties, I cannot categorically mention the whole 18 political parties. I believe even members of INEC, even GD himself. So why should we have 100 political parties? For God's sake, even an ordinary man, a common man, will say this is too much, for God's sake. And for the judiciary is to actually improve the political environment or to mar it. Why? Because by the end of the day, you have 100 political parties, 90 political parties, the post-election petitions, as well as, tribunal cases. Now it's going to be too much on the judiciary. You understand? And 100 political parties going to court. When are you going to bring out the final verdict for Nigerians to start actually tapping from the dividend of democracy? So the end justifies the means. Political party is not an end to itself, okay, but a process, okay? So we shouldn't focus too much on political party. We should focus too much on democracy.
But would you then support independent candidacy, for instance?
That would have been better.
Because if you don't align with the characters in this A or B or C.
If you have 10, 20, 30 independent candidates, we should have been advocating for independent candidates. That will reduce cost. That will provide more freedom.
I don't see how it reduces costs. I don't see how it reduces costs, because what would the ballot papers look like?
Yes, but at least we're not going to have like a kind of an assembly of people. Everybody, I belong to this political party. The councillors, you have maybe 50, 60 councillors. You have maybe 3, 4, 5, or 50, 90 people, going for gubernatorial elections. You have 90 presidential candidates. But what we are saying here is that one-man show, individualistic candidature is less expensive than a holistic party movement, just stealing for political power. So in a nutshell, the court should make sure that we have a kind of a harmonious political environment. I believe the judiciary want to be relevant. And that is why in the previous elections, it was argued that now it is the court that determines who wins elections. Because most of gubernatorial elections, presidential elections, councillorship, chairmanship elections all go to court. Finally, you go to, Court of Appeal from the tribunals. Finally, the Supreme Court give judgment. That is why in some of the symposia carried out, it's been advised these courts should be decentralized. Those that will treat gubernatorial cases, election cases, those that will exclusively deal with presidential cases. You don't need to be appealing here and there. And the judiciary, sometimes you begin to imagine, this has been said severally, do we have different constitutions? Isn't one constitution, this court will decide, this way, and the other will actually make a different judgment. So the judiciary should actually make it easier for the political environment, for Nigerians and the political associations.
Right.
The level we want to be relevant, we shouldn't be like the Congress of United States of America. Woodrow Wilson went to the Paris Peace Conference, which resulted in the production of the Versailles Treaty, which ended the First World War. Woodrow Wilson, being the American president, he advocated for the League of Nations, which the international community as well as the allies agreed to accept. But back home, the Congress refused to ratify the League of Nations, meaning United States of America has never been a member of the League. So therefore, why the Congress wanted to be relevant? Meaning, if United States of America should go to war, United States of America will directly go to war without the approval of the Congress. So the judiciary should consider itself relevant in Nigerian politics and try to harmonize the political processes. Because from the previous elections, we are seeing that the court is becoming more powerful in deciding who governs. So if that should be the case, they should assuage the difficulties, to be experienced within the political processes by, and I'm happy that the Constitution is there, which the Electoral Act will have to actually be a macrocosm of the general constitution by deriving those particular rules and general guidelines for political parties to be registered. Some said that we have even proxy political parties. We have one major political party that could actually hatch 2, 3, 4, 5, or even 10 political parties.
All right,
Exactly.
we've run out of time completely,
Yeah.
so that we just take concluding remarks from Sejide in a minute.
So thank you so much. My own submission, and going back to what Larry asked me earlier, whether we need to reform our laws or to review our laws guiding political operations. I quite agree, and I've made that submission. Let's have a decentralized political system. Not all political parties should contest for the presidential election. Let there be, just like banks, let there be regional. Now, the president has created what? Regional development commissions.
Yeah.
You get? Let all parties, if you want to be in Zobu party, register in the southeast and then contest election in the 5 southeastern states. If you want to be in Bati, register for southwest, to contest election in the 6th state. So we can do that, and I think then at the national level, INEC will not be overwhelmed, and then judiciary, by extension, will also have less to do in terms of post-election dispute resolution.
All right, we need to wrap up the conversation. Thank you so much. Director, your final words, and of course, what most Nigerians will want to hear is that INEC will live up to expectation. A situation whereby elections are held and there will be no need to go to the courtroom. Your last words.
Yeah. Party registration is serious business. And so those who come seeking registration or seeking to be registered must come with all sense of responsibility and service to citizenry, to the electorate. If you look at that list again, like I said, you'll see that quite a number of them are not ready for business. So the commission is not going to gag any political association, provided they meet all the requirements, they will be registered.
So is INEC ready for business come 2027?
Very much so.
All right. Many thanks for joining us for this conversation. We do sincerely appreciate you. I'd like to thank Victoria Etemesi, Director of Voter Education and Publicity Department, INEC. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And of course, Professor Sharif Gali Ibrahim, Head of Department Political Science and International Relations, University of Abuja. Former Head of Department Political Science and International Relations, University of Abuja. Many thanks for being our guest. We do sincerely appreciate you. And yes, Jide Ojo, Public Affairs Analyst, always a delight to listen to you. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure.
All right, so we'll take a break now. Our second conversation is up. You want to stay put for that? Stay with us.